Health, Ethics, and Law, an international radio program produced by the World Association for Medical Law. Editing and broadcasting by Oren Asman.
Hello, and welcome to our program on health, ethics, and law. This program is probably the first international radio program to ever discuss those important issues, and it is a part of the vision of the World Association for Medical Law to promote education for health workers, jurists, and ethicists, but also to engage a wider public in the discussions and deliberations about important health-related issues. Each week, another interview with a prominent expert in the fields of health law, legal medicine, or bioethics will be broadcast and remain available online. You, the listeners, are encouraged to post your remarks online or send us an email. That way, each program may set a starting point for discussion. The interviews are held during major international congresses and cover many different topics. As the interviewees are from different states and countries, we hope to gradually provide a truly international and multicultural perspective in the true spirit of the World Association for Medical Law. Today on our first program, we have with us Professor Sandy Sanbar, Chairman of the American Board of Legal Medicine. Our scientific advisor is Professor Thomas Noguchi. This is Oren Asman, and let us begin.
Health, Ethics, and Law, an online international educational initiative for the benefit of the worldwide public. Produced by the World Association for Medical Law.
We are here in Orlando, Florida, at the annual meeting of the American College of Legal Medicine. And we have here with us today Professor Sandy Sanbar. Professor Sanbar, you're both a lawyer and a doctor, is that right?
Yes. Actually, I'm a biochemist. I have a PhD in biochemistry, and I am a physician, a cardiologist, and an attorney at law.
So do you work both as a lawyer and a doctor?
I worked both since 1980. For 30 years, I worked as a lawyer and a doctor. Mm-hmm. But in the last 3 years, I stopped seeing patients and devoting myself to teaching the law of medicine and seeing clients as well.
When you talk about teaching the law of medicine, what does it mean, the law of medicine?
Well, over the past perhaps 2 decades in particular, there has been a transformation in the teaching of medical students and residents. There has been a development of legal medicine, which is teaching the medical students that there are laws that must be followed when they practice medicine. And what is interesting, during the past 2 decades, the medical schools, and there are in the United States 129 accredited medical schools. Of those, at the present time, we have 23 that offer doctor-lawyer degrees. And that is growing rapidly. The doctor-lawyer idea is that we need to have doctors who would teach the law of medicine not only to students, but also to the public, to lawyers, general public, judges, and so on. And they will become individuals who will hold the highest positions in the United States, whether it is the Surgeon General's office or Commissioner of Social Security and Disability or Food and Drug Administration, and on and on. But at the academic level, which you seem to be most interested in, at the academic level we have a shortage of doctor lawyers who would be chairmen and or professors of legal medicine who will teach medical ethics and medical law. And in the United States, it is illegal for a non-attorney to teach the law. That would be considered practicing law without a license, and that is illegal.
Teaching law requires you to be a lawyer?
Absolutely.
Okay. It sounds reasonable.
Right. So we have then a shortage. We, in the United States, we are mandating, now it is required in most 100% actually of medical schools require medical ethics teaching. It's required.
100% of medical schools
100%
in the U.S. That's wonderful.
And most universities now are demanding actually teaching the law of medicine, that's legal medicine, but we don't have the professors. So we are trying to generate enough physician lawyers who would teach. Most of the people that were filling the gap were those who have maybe a PhD in public health plus a JD. In other words, non-MD people.
Okay. So you're talking about the requirement to teach medical ethics in medical schools, and then we talked about people with a degree in law. But there is a difference between medical ethics and medical law or legal medicine, isn't there?
Absolutely. When talking purely about medical ethics, we're dealing with moral issues. However, there is no way we can teach moral issues without delving into the legal aspect. If we want to teach consent and informed consent as part of the medical ethics, it is almost impossible to do that without a thorough knowledge of the law of informed consent. Similarly, negligence or a simple idea, first do no harm.
Yes.
Clearly, we have medical ethics issues. And the way I look at it is that medical ethics and legal medicine are like Siamese twins.
Oh, so I'll give some of my personal experience. I teach lawyers many times, and I teach medical ethics to lawyers. Usually they would want to know right away what is the legal situation, what is the legal solution. And to me, that shows that perhaps when you become a lawyer, you seek for the solutions, in the statutes, which is a good thing, but it's also perhaps a bad thing because it's kind of limiting the way you look at a problem. You immediately seek for a solution within the scope of the law without first asking yourself what would be the right thing to do. And for that, I'm trying to ask you, do you encounter that as well when you teach ethics, or are students willing to say, okay, we'll talk about the law later, let's first focus on how it should be done?
No, we don't really approach it that way. Perhaps our approach is slightly different from your approach. During the past 20 years that we have been developing the legal medicine curriculum, we have now a model curriculum in the United States, which just published, as you probably saw in the e-book, Legal Medicine and Medical Ethics. Well, prior to that, this is the 8th edition. But when we started in the 1980s with the first edition, the name of the book was Legal Medicine. Recognizing over the past 25 years that we have developed the model curriculum, we found that there is no way that we can teach legal medicine without incorporating as an integral part of legal medicine, medical ethics. You can look at it as medical ethics and legal medicine are really one. In essence, as I mentioned earlier, it is the Siamese twins. When we teach legal medicine and medical ethics in the United States, we do not separate at all medical ethics. Actually, we feel it is the wrong thing to do to teach medical ethics as a separate course. The reason is simply this. In the United States, again, the physicians tried to teach medical ethics and they had no license to teach the law.
Yes.
They limited it artificially.
Yes.
And they called it medical ethics because they were not. Now that we say, well, we have to look at the whole picture,
right.
Therefore we do not separate them. And that's why we have legal medicine and medical ethics.
Well, maybe we'll talk later on how it is perhaps the right way to discuss medical ethics. I would just say that when we deal with that, in my courses at least, we look at the law as one of the aspects when you decide how to act. That is, it's not the first thing you look at, it's not the only thing you look at, it's one of the factors that you must consider before deciding what to do. Now that would perhaps sound strange that a lawyer is teaching people that the law is not the only thing that is there. But I think one of the things that we're trying to say is that perhaps when there is a gap between what you find as the right thing to do and the legal status, then you perhaps should work to change it. And if you're not going to look at, a wider picture and you just look at the law and says this is what we have to do, then we're never going to advance and change the laws. So in that respect, I would want to perhaps talk to you about the general picture. You talked to me before about the importance of teaching legal medicine, not just to lawyers and not just to doctors, but also to the wider public. And perhaps you could give us a simple or a general overview. What does it include? What is legal medicine? What are the fields that should be of interest to the wider public?
This is an excellent question. In order to have a specialty in legal medicine, it is mandatory to have a structured course that identifies the topics in legal medicine. Legal medicine has been defined over the years as maybe dealing with only the law, as you mentioned. And to us, when we look at the legal aspects of medical practice, we do include the medical ethics. So part of the teaching of legal medicine is actually teaching medical ethics. Mm-hmm. We have developed 10 different parts, components of legal medicine. Legal medicine is a multidisciplinary grouping of public health, professionalism, including the philosophies and including the humanities. It includes medical malpractice. It includes end-of-life issues. Mm-hmm. It includes treatment of special patients. So what we have had to identify first, what exactly is legal medicine? Therefore, in going through the process of identifying legal medicine, we have included as the major component right at the beginning, professionalism and the medical humanities. We believe that every physician must go through non-medical training, whether it is the philosophy or the professionalism, competency issues, knowledge of surrounding communities, the demand on the physician to treat not only the patient, but also the duty to third party, the family, even the non-identified individual, and most importantly, the physician is a member of a community, mm-hmm. and therefore the physician has to be involved in the public, whether it is a disaster such as Haiti or Chile, disasters that affect the community. So we look at the physician as a whole, not as a treating physician of a patient. Mm-hmm. That's what legal medicine is about. And that's why we consider medical ethics as an integral, major component of legal medicine. It is the basis of the laws that emanate. Without mores and habits and moral values, we never end up with laws. So it is the vehicle to the laws. Yes, you can separate them and teach them separately, but we really believe that legal medicine comprises the non-law, so to speak, but it is an integral part thereof.
Mm-hmm. So let's take an example. A doctor practicing in one of the states in the U.S., perhaps in Texas, and he is a gynecologist, and he has a patient, perhaps a woman in her 7th month of pregnancy, and I do not know exactly what the laws in Texas say about this phase of the pregnancy, but let's say that she needs, perhaps, or she wants to, for some reason, perhaps a congenital defect or other, to have an abortion. Let's say there is a conflict between what she wants and what the doctor thinks is right, or perhaps between what he thinks is right and what the law allows for him to do. How do you prepare doctors for such a case? How do you teach the general public about their rights or what they're able to do and can do? How do you do that?
Again, we go back to moral values, and the first thing that we do in any class is make sure that we respect every individual's beliefs. Therefore, if I have somebody who is maybe a Catholic that does not believe in abortion versus someone who does not mind having an abortion that is based on a good reason, we respect both. But that is the ethical issues. Now we move, you said 7 months. Now we would have to identify the law, if there is a law, that would be applicable to that patient. So we would teach then all the class, all the doctors, that there are certain things that they have to consider. One of them is the law. Now, in the United States, as you well know, the Roe versus Wade, we are not really permitted to do abortions in the third trimester. However, a woman has certain rights before that, during the first and second, certainly before the fetus becomes viable.
Yes.
And therefore, we would try to explain what the law is, regardless of the beliefs of the individuals. So now, having respected the beliefs and having presented the law, now we look at the issues and say, well, what can be done, if anything? In terms of, again, we emphasize the law. However, we never forget the beliefs of individuals. If a physician disagrees with the law, then it is very simple. That doctor should recuse himself and find somebody else who will follow the law. So we do not, again, enforce our laws on the physician whose beliefs we respect, but we tell him you have to step aside because you cannot really go against the law. And if you are incapable of doing that because of your honest and respectable beliefs, then you have to step aside.
Health, Ethics, and Law, an international educational initiative of the World Association for Medical Law.
Would you consider doctors to be potential, I'd say, societal leaders to some extent? I mean, doctors deal with human lives and health. This is relevant to everyone, or to most of us during our lifetime. Now, I'm thinking about an example, and again, an American example of Dr. Jack Kevorkian, who quite a lot of years ago, I think, decided to go public with something he believed in, that is physician-assisted suicide, or whatever the term may be, which he made sure is going to be photographed and put on TV to show that he thinks that the laws are not representing what is ethically right. So here's a doctor saying, I'm breaking the law, watch me do it and face the issue. What do you think? It doesn't need to be just this specific example, but to what extent do you think doctors should be sort of leading the discussion, the public discussion in those very, very important issues?
You're asking me about doctors only, and I would like to, with your permission, change it to doctor lawyers, if I may, because we are at a doctor-lawyer meeting.
Yes.
I do believe that every member of society has a role to play as a potential leader, and it is nice to have proactive individuals in any field. However, when it comes to medicine, we at the American College of Legal Medicine strongly believe, and I cannot speak for the college, but as a chairman of the American Board of Legal Medicine, I can tell you that the individuals who are board certified in legal medicine are trained as leaders. These are individuals who not only know the medical aspects, but also the legal aspects of medical practice. Those people are going to be leaders, and they will hold, hopefully, the highest conceivable position, because they can work with not only judges and lawyers, but also with the medical community, and they have the credibility they need to be the leaders, and we are building them as leaders. They can be the members of the legislative branch, and there are now MD-JDs that do hold legislative positions. We have MD-JDs that are judges. We have people that are part of the Food and Drug Administration and also in drug research by pharmaceutical firms who hold positions as vice presidents. These people understand not only the administrative aspect and the legal aspect of that particular organization, but also the medical aspects. So those would be potential leaders, and we are building them. They are the ones that will teach, who will hold the positions as professors. So I would think those people with such a panoramic view of society will be extremely helpful. To go back to Kevorkian, I personally do not believe that anyone should impose his or her own personal belief on others. They need to go through a process. They need to consider and respect every other individual, particularly those that disagree with them. But we do have to go through a process that would hopefully satisfy everybody. And the people that can do that is not somebody like Kevorkian, but people that have both knowledge of the legal aspects as well as the medical aspect, and of course the medical ethics.
Mm-hmm. Professor Sanbar, you're also a practicing lawyer. Which kind of cases do you take?
Primarily cases that involve physicians. To give you examples, just last month I was asked to help a group of physicians who are trying to develop their policies for treating patients with pain medications. Mm-hmm. And we do have now very stringent laws that govern the use of controlled substances. Mm-hmm. So we have to go through developing the policy for the office, developing the type of informed consent to be used, the Bill of Rights for patients, what instructions to give to the patients, and then most importantly, the law requires us to have outcome data, mm-hmm. and we do have to follow the patients with questionnaires in order to convince the Narcotics Bureau that we are getting positive value. If it is given without any outcome that is satisfactory, then obviously the treatment is useless. Now, this is an example which is purely administrative. There are examples where I represented people in front of the Social Security Administration, yes. Issues of private privileges, administrative hearings at hospitals, to defend doctors in front of the State Medical Licensing Board because they have been told they are unprofessional, mm-hmm. and so on. The area is so great. Medical malpractice, of course, being yes. a private attorney, those are very common.
Yes. Well, you seem to have a wide perspective on those issues and matters. You write a lot, you edit quite a lot of publications, and deal with it both as a lawyer and as a doctor. And I was hoping perhaps to get some of this perspective and share it with the listeners. If we look at what happened in this field of health law or legal medicine, perhaps in the last, 30 years. And if we look 30 years ahead, what would be, in your mind, the changes that have occurred so far? And, the second question would be, what do you see forthcoming in the next 30 years?
Well, obviously, I would be a very poor person to think 30 years, but I would make an effort to tell you what I think might be worth considering. In the last 30 years, what we have seen is the development of medical ethics and legal medicine education as a required or mandatory course in teaching doctors and medical students. So in medical school, starting with medical school, the biggest change that has occurred is that medicine is not just being taught as medicine. Now we have to consider other areas, and one of those other areas is the law of medicine. And therefore, in medical school, the changes have been to offer both mandatory courses, which would be required 15 hours to 18 hours per year in legal medicine and medical ethics, more on legal medicine, and elective courses in medical school, which have credit toward not only medical schools, but also law schools. So then that caused the departments or the schools of medicine and the school of law to realize that they have a lot of common things. Yes. So we would have mock trials, which involve law students and medical students. We would have courses attended by medical students and law students. So that has been a change. It is no longer law is law and medicine is medicine, but now we are seeing an integration of the two. Now, for the future, Why would this be important? I think in terms of the next 30 years, if you look at it, we have to, it is our duty and responsibility to develop individuals, and if you will, maybe mold individuals as our future leaders who would look at law and medicine specifically, and by medicine here I mean all the components, public health that I mentioned, end-of-life issues with Kevorkian and other areas, abortion issues that you raised. We have to look at this whole picture and who would be in the best position to help. In the future, we're going to have individuals who have a broader view of medicine or law. And one of those individuals would be the person who is studying medicine and law. Those people will help us answer the issues and problems that you have raised, such as who decides about end-of-life issues. This also would help our courts, the judges, to make the proper decisions, because now we have individuals that understand both.
Mm-hmm. Looking back, I think it was in 1954 when the first successful organ transplantation was done, I think, in Boston. So until 1954, there was probably no need to have a law pertaining to these matters. And I think it was in 1968 when the Harvard criteria for brain death were presented. So perhaps there was no need to talk about brain death in the law before that time. And so on and so forth. In 1978, Baby Brown, the first test tube baby, presented with another question that perhaps the law should face. So again, I'm asking you, so we know what happened in the last, 50 years. Do you think there's going to be some new laws pertaining to health that perhaps are relevant or are going to be talking about some new inventions in the health technologies in the next generation? Do you have any thoughts on that?
I think that every time a new innovative medical measure develops, we end up with some kind of criteria or guidelines, and then ultimately the law. Law is an evolving system. As we progress, as we develop, then we have new laws, and some of the old laws may become archaic. Yes, we will definitely have new laws. There's no question about it. And what innovative things will happen, I don't know, in medicine that would create as important issues as the organ transplantation or other such areas. But yes, I do think we're getting into the area of stem cell research. We're going back to issues of eugenics that we have to consider, that were looked down at, and now we're trying to see how can you balance issues that may be construed as eugenics versus what is good for the community and the health of the community. So there's no doubt we are in the midst of stem cell research problems. They were not allowed under the Bush administration. Now under the Obama administration, we are permitted to do a limited amount of stem cell research. So yes, there will be a tremendous change in law, and that's why you do need individuals that understand both the legal and the medical aspects in order to have, hopefully, laws that would be proper.
Professor Sanbar, thank you very much for this really interesting talk, and perhaps on our next talk about 30 years from now, we're going to see what's new and what has changed. Yes. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
This was another program on health, ethics, and law, an international educational initiative of the World Association for Medical Law. Scientific advisor, Professor Thomas Noguchi. Editing and broadcasting, Oren Asman. The program is available at www.wamlradio.org.